World War II saw many great ships in action. We all remember the valor of USS Enterprise, the terror of the Bismarck, and the sacrifice of HMS Campbellton. But U-505 was notable for a different reason. U-505 was, supposedly, the unluckiest U-boat of World War II. Many of the articles I read about the boat labeled it that way. But maybe, just maybe, that isn't the whole story. It occurred to me that maybe by being unlucky, this submarine actually lucked out. U-505, a Type 9C, was commissioned into the Kriegsmarine on August 26, 1941, and would eventually complete 12 patrols during the war. Her first 2 patrols were fairly normal. It was on the third voyage that things started to go wrong. Patrolling off the coast of Central America, U-505 started out strong, sinking 2 American Liberty ships in 2 days. But after that, the crew sighted nothing but seagulls and starfish. That is, until they came upon a 153-ton sailing ship, the Urious. The captain, Kapitänleutnant Axel Olaf Loa, ordered his men to sink the vessel using the deck gun, which they promptly did, only to later find out that the ship belonged to a diplomat of the neutral state of Colombia. The sinking of the Urious would be one of the casus bellis that caused Colombia to abandon neutrality and declare war on Germany. Loa was relieved and would never hold command again. Instead, a new captain, Kapitänleutnant Peter Zschech, took command. He was considered a rising star of the submarine service, and had already won 2 Iron Crosses as a first officer. His superiors expected big things from him, but Peter Zschech would enter the history books for something rather unexpected. Zschech's first patrol as commander began in October 1942, again roaming the coast of Central America. However, the patrol was disastrously cut short when U-505 was sighted by a Lockheed Hudson maritime reconnaissance aircraft of No. 53 Squadron, Royal Air Force. The plane dropped a 250-pound bomb directly on the sub. The conning tower and pressure hull were severely damaged, and the deck gun was torn right off. Fortunately for the crew, the Hudson shot itself in the foot, literally, and was hit by its own bomb fragmentation, plunging into the sea and killing all aboard, including RAAF pilot Flight Sergeant Ronald Silcook. Zschech gave the order to abandon ship, but the CPO in charge of the technical staff refused, insisting that the sub could be saved. 2 weeks later, U-505 limped back to port. She would require months of repairs. Despite the repairs, U-505's luck did not improve. Quite the opposite, in fact. On the next patrol, her 5th, an attack by British destroyers left her crippled after only 13 days at sea. While the sub was being patched up, French resistance members working at the dockyard took the opportunity to add some of their own repairs, including drilling holes in fuel tanks and installing faulty electronics. The resistance members were caught and sadly executed, but their sabotage had been quite thorough. U-505's next 4 patrols were all cut short after only a few days at sea due to the need for new repairs. This became such a regular occurrence that upon returning after one such outing, the crew found a sign on the dock reading U-505's hunting ground. Zschech himself became the butt of jokes among officers of the submarine service. Morale among the crew plummeted. On the boat's 10th patrol, Zschech's 7th, things started to look up. The boat was running as expected. They made their way into the Atlantic, and just past Spain, only 15 days out, they got hit by the Allies again. Under attack by an American aircraft, and with depth charges exploding around them, Zschech suffered a mental breakdown and shot himself in the control room, becoming the only U-boat commander to commit suicide during a patrol. The first officer had to bring the damaged submarine back to base. Out of almost 14 months in command, Zschech had only spent a total of 96 days at sea, 69 of which were during his first patrol, and sank a grand total of 1 ship. Command then passed to Oberleutnant zur See Harold Lange. He was tasked with reviving the submarine's fortunes. But, as before, U-505's misfortune continued. Her next patrol lasted only 9 days, but it was still plagued by mechanical issues and frequent encounters with well-prepared Allied forces. On June 4, 1944, U-505's fate was sealed. Operating off the coast of West Africa, she was detected by U.S. Navy Task Force 22.3, composed of escort carrier USS Guadalcanal and 5 destroyer escorts: USS Chatelaine, USS Flaherty, USS Jenks, USS Pillsbury, and USS Pope. The task force was hunting U-boats, and its commanding officer, Captain Daniel Gallery, had recently come up with a plan to capture the next one he encountered, which happened to be the U-505. TF-22.3 severely damaged the submarine with depth charges, and she was forced to the surface. As crew members abandoned ship, a boarding party from USS Pillsbury was dispatched to seize the vessel. Not knowing if the sub was about to sink or even explode, and not having any idea what kind of resistance they might face inside, Lieutenant Junior Grade Albert David and a small party of men descended into the sub. However, the crew of U-505 was so ready to abandon ship, they had failed to follow proper scuttling procedure. They couldn't even sink their boat right. The U.S. sailors started salvaging the ship and grabbed codebooks, charts, and even a working Enigma machine. The capture of U-505 was the first successful boarding and capture of an enemy vessel by the U.S. Navy since the War of 1812, and the action won Lieutenant David the only Medal of Honor awarded to a sailor in the Atlantic theater of World War II. The submarine was hastily field repaired, towed to Bermuda, and meticulously examined. The Allies kept the capture a closely guarded secret, preventing the Germans from realizing that their codes had been compromised. The captured sailors were even kept in isolation from other POWs for the rest of the war. After the war, the U-505 was displayed in various ports before finding a permanent home at the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago. It remains there today. Now, at the beginning of this video, I mentioned how U-505 was lucky by being unlucky. Over the course of the war, 783 U-boats were sunk, with the loss of 30,000 lives, about 75% of the entire U-boat force. 75%! And while they were at sea, conditions were cramped, smelly, and dangerous. Throughout the war, U-505's crew mostly got to stay at their home port. They suffered few casualties. When their boat was damaged by an RAF aircraft, that plane went into the sea and didn't keep circling, guiding vengeful destroyers to the stricken craft. And once captured, they were interred in American POW camps, which were rather better accommodations than what other POWs got. Most of the men who served on the boat got to go home after the war, return to their spouses and parents. They had been paid wages that were equal to U.S. sailors' pay, which was notably higher than they would have gotten in the Kriegsmarine. And most of the men would die of natural causes, not because they drowned or were crushed by imploding metal under dark waters. Moreover, World War II was never really a question of would Germany win. If you want more of an explanation on that, I'll point you to Potential Histories videos, which will be linked in the description. World War II wasn't could Germany win? It was a question of how much death and despair and destruction would it take to defeat Germany. And the intelligence gained from the capture of that U-boat helped the answer to that question be less than it might have been otherwise. So maybe U-505 was actually a very lucky boat for everyone.